didn't see you there. Welcome back to my channel. This week, I'm sure you can tell, we are going to be doing something Pokemon related. For those of you who don't know, I am an absolutely massive Pokemon fan, Pikachu in particular, and I have been since the 90s. As such, I'm part of a vintage Pokemon collectors group on Facebook, where recently I made an absolutely fascinating discovery. Somebody posted something on there which combined two of my absolute passions in life. One being Pokemon, and two being sewing. It was a vintage Pokemon sewing pattern done by McCall's. Now, I never knew these existed because they weren't ever released here in New Zealand. After learning of their existence, I knew I had to own one immediately, so I jumped onto eBay and lo and behold, there were so many of them. And one of them stuck out to me in particular. I'm going to tell you about it now. It was, dun dun dun, a vintage Pikachu Pokemon backpack sewing pattern. Now, why was that one in particular so exciting to me? Well, let me tell you. Ever since I was a child, I have been known to walk around with a Pikachu backpack on my back. I even took one to my very first trip in Disney World in 2013. I happen to have 3 of them here in my collection, 2 of them being my ones from when I was a child. I have the first one here, which, as you can see, he is very well loved. His stitching has been falling apart for the past few years now, and he's much more of a display piece. I initially began repairing him as it was happening, but now I think he's gotten to the point where I'd have to take him apart completely and re-sew him together, and I just don't feel like doing that, so he's a permanent display piece now. The second one is this one here, and as you can see on the back here, his zip has completely blown out. Now, I have thought about replacing it. However, I'm just not confident enough in bag making where I feel I could replace a zip just yet, but he is also now a permanent display piece. The last one is exactly the same as my first one, but it was gifted to me by my good friend Anna, and he's still in really good condition. I don't want to wear him anymore because I'm terrified he's going to end up like my original one from the 90s and all of the stitching's going to fall apart. So he is also a permanent display piece. So that brings me back around to this pattern. I can't tell you how excited I was to discover this pattern existed, because I have been wearing a Pikachu backpack since forever. However, now I'm wearing a messenger bag style one, and it's just not the same for me. I miss my little round chubby guy who sits on my back. And now, thanks to this pattern, I'm going to be able to create my own one, which is very, very exciting for me, because it was much cheaper for me to buy the materials needed to make this bag than it was for me to buy one of these original 90s backpacks second hand. So without any further ado, let's dive right into this project. Obviously, I'm going to be using McCall's 2512 for this project. And here are my fabrics, although I will swap the brown felt out later on in the video for the same minky fleece that the white and black is. And all the other bits and bobs. We've got webbing, we've got bag clips, we've got assorted buttons and a nose, and finally we have a zipper and some yellow polyester dye. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is change the colour of these buttons that I brought for his cheeks. Now, ideally I would have dyed these because they are fabric. However, I don't have any red polyester dye, and I didn't want to spend $20 just to dye something that is this small. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to use these 2 Copic markers because I don't actually have a red, but I found when you mix this orange yellow and this pink together that it comes off as red, and I'm just going to colour them in and hopefully that should work. Speaking of dyeing things though, I am now currently getting a dye bath ready so that I can dye the white fabric yellow. And because I'm dyeing polyester fabric, I am adding about a tablespoon of dishwashing liquid. Now this helps adhere the dye to the fabric itself. I ended up using the entire bottle of this daffodil yellow, and I dyed it for about half an hour, stirring constantly throughout the process. So here is the result of the dye bath. I am so happy with this colour. It's turned out the perfect shade of Pika yellow, and now I'm just waiting for it to dry and then I can finally start cutting it out and assembling it. I have just finished transferring all of the pattern pieces onto tracing paper, because I didn't want to damage the original pattern because it was in such good condition, and the next step now is for me to begin cutting them out. So these first two fabrics that I'm about to cut out, I actually end up swapping out later in the video. The brown felt I swap out for the same minky fabric that the rest of the Pikachu's made out of, and the Pokemon fabric I swap out for a Gen 1 starter Pokemon fabric. All of the pieces are now cut out, and now I'm going to begin the first step, which is adding the nose and the mouth. Although the instructions say to hand embroider his mouth, I used a tight satin stitch on my machine instead. And for the nose, instead of hand embroidering it, I found a little triangle nose at the Emporium and I used that instead. I'm using a match to gently melt the edge of the polyester webbing so that I don't have to fold it on itself and sew it a bunch of times. Here I chose to use different clips for my bag because I thought parachute clips were super ugly and I wasn't about having that on my bag. For a lot of these things, I don't press any of the seams towards whichever side they're meant to, and that's because the fabric didn't really want to press, and also it sort of just rolled in that direction anyway. So for this step, not only did I edge stitch them, but I also then did a close satin stitch around the edge just to give it a more professional finish. Once again, like the stripes on the back, I also did both edge stitching and then satin stitching to make the tail look more professional. Also for the tail, I changed up their steps for the interfacing. Instead of ironing interfacing onto one side of the tail, I actually just cut some stiffened felt a little bit smaller than the tail, and I used that to stuff the inside of the tail so that it would be nice and stiff.
Once again, because I decided not to use the parachute clips for my bag because they're ugly, I had to sort of adjust the step to fit the D-rings that I had brought instead. Here I'm cutting some lining fabric for the bottom. The pattern didn't call for this, it wanted you to put the straight Pikachu fabric on the bottom of the bag, but I thought that was kind of ugly and I wanted the lining to match the rest of the lining. And finally, here's me adding the non-parachute clips to the upper straps of my bag. So there you have it. That is how I made my brand new Pikachu Pokemon backpack. Now all in all, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. My expectations were incredibly low, purely because I'm not the biggest fan of sewing plush toys. I find they're really fiddly and tedious to put together. And I mean, this one was fiddly and tedious to put together, but I think the results turned out really, really well. I'm pretty happy with how spacious it is on the inside. It looks like it's going to be able to hold my phone and wallet quite easily, so that's cool. I mean, that's all I really want in a backpack, so. Would I make this pattern again? Yes. Yes, I would. I think it is fantastic, and I actually can't wait to make another one, because I have a few adjustments I would like to do on it. I would very much like to make the straps longer. As it is now, I can't actually wear it on my back with both of the straps on. It's just too short for me. Like, I should have known that this was made for a child and adjusted it accordingly, but I didn't, so what are you gonna do? Other than that though, that's the only thing I would have changed about it. Anyway, with all that being said, I really hope you enjoyed this week's video. I know I had a lot of fun making this one. It was very nostalgic to me. And if this sort of thing is something that you enjoy, please like and subscribe. I always try and upload a new video every Friday or so, and they're usually me making something or doing something craft related. And of course, having fun. So, until next week, I'll see you then. Bye!